Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Delicate Balance of Nature. We're glad you're here. As you can see by the sign, thanks for being a friend. We hope, let's actually show of hands. How many people are members of the Friends of Penny Camp yet? Wow, quite a few. If you have not joined, we hope you will. The Friends is a group that raises support for the parks, and that is financial, that is through events and special programs. So we also want to thank, before we even start our program, all of the volunteers who make this evening possible. Okay, the people who helped you get your wine and cheese, the people who welcomed you, and volunteers. I'm going to steal a little line from Elena tonight. The volunteers make this park function. They make it happen. So thank you to all our volunteers tonight for everything you do. We also want to give you some dates for programs that are going to be coming up. We'll be doing a Mighty Migrations talk, which, spoiler alert, is about birds on the 22nd. We're going to talk about pollinators in July, and we're going to have an outdoor education program in August. And we have a hot off the press event that has not even been announced, but in September, Penny Camp has been chosen to be the site for one of the 250th anniversary of America celebration events for the county. So on the 12th of September, we are going to be inviting the community, so that's all of you, to a paddle parade. We're going to be doing free paddle boards and kayaks and hot dogs, and we're all going to go explore the mangrove. So hope you can be there for that. Made possible by the sport. You know, these things cramp my style. Let's talk about that. Let's just talk super briefly because we've got to get to a really interesting talk tonight. I hope everyone knows that the park is about to get a brand new Discovery Center and aquarium. So in the next couple of years, how many of you have started a project by saying, honey, I think we need to do something about that bathroom, or this kitchen is really in bad shape? And how many have finished with just doing one room? So the park is pretty much that situation. We're going to get a state-of-the-art Discovery Center, a new aquarium. We are also getting new seawalls. We are getting a new bridge. We are getting new bathrooms. We are getting upgraded facilities for the concessions. So your park is going to be absolutely beyond belief, brand new, and to the tune of, this is a $52 million project. $50 million is the largest project the state has ever done. And I do want to share some good news about that project. A month or so ago, we invited the TDC, who distributes the money that our visitors bring with them, and our commissioner, Holly Rashine, to see the details about the project. And guess what? The TDC has voted to fund $2 million toward exhibits and a community room for the Park Discovery Center. So thank you. I will say, you can't quote me, but I know sometimes those of us who live here are not always sure what happens with that TDC money, but I'm here to tell you tonight, it's going back to make our park even better. And that's something we can all be thankful for. So tonight, we're going to have a speaker who is genuinely not only an expert, but someone that I think we all know, and if we're a volunteer, we all deeply appreciate. Elena Muratori has been with the park since 2001. She graduated from the New College of Florida with an environmental science degree, after which she got her master's in counseling. And I will tell you, those two qualifications serve her well as a volunteer coordinator. She is the person that people can go to when they have a problem, when they have a question. Elena also worked at several different state parks before she came to Penny Camp in 2001. So this year in March, I want to have a round of applause for 25 years that Elena has been helping us at the park. She is, as I said, the volunteer coordinator, so she's the person that makes sure all of the volunteers get hired, trained, supported, and we all appreciate her so deeply. Elena also has worked in various categories in the park. She was instrumental in the 50th anniversary celebration of the park. So Elena Muratori is truly someone who lives the saying that we've all heard, be the change you wish to see in the world. So she is the person who has dedicated her life and her career to making things better and educating people about our wonderful park and our wonderful environment. And tonight she's going to educate us about the history of Pennicamp. So, Elena.
Thank you, Anne. So I'm also going to use a microphone. Does that help people? Yes. Good. I have hearing aids, so I know it helps. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for the introduction, Anne. I have been at this park for 25 years, and next weekend is my 30th anniversary with the Florida Park Service. I thought I'd do this job for 5 years, but there's always something new to learn and something new to do and new people to meet and tell about what I love about our parks. So the Florida Park Service mission is to provide resource-based recreation while interpreting, preserving, and restoring both natural and cultural resources. So that's what we're all about. So where did the idea for Pennicamp come? We had this rapid development happening of our southeast coastal areas, and it gave rise to an environmental concern by citizens and scientists and politicians alike. You could see all the development there. In 1928, David Fairchild was elected first president of the Tropic Everglades Park Board. The original plans for Everglades National Park actually included Key Largo out to the coral reef, but there was difficulty in getting that through because the citizens of the county were concerned of dilution of their tax base by doing so. So to make Everglades National Park happen, they took out the Key Largo water part, the Key Largo area. In 1946, the Everglades National Park Commission was reactivated, and John Pennicamp, who was a newspaperman in Miami, was the head of that board. He was very instrumental in the Everglades National Park being finally created in 1947. In 1957, 10 years later, there was a scientific conference held at Everglades National Park. Gilbert Voss may be a name that some of you know. There's books out there that he's written. But he was a professor of marine biology at the University of Miami, and he made an impassioned plea for the preservation of the reef, that the reef needed to be protected. He pointed out mounds of queen conch in all the gift shops, mounds of them. We actually ended up having them completely eliminated, and the ones you see out in the ocean now were seeded. They were grown in labs and put out, and they're doing well, so that's a good thing. And then, of course, people were collecting coral. They had crowbars out at the reef to crack out the coral, and that would be in stores. And I'll tell you now, the ones you see in the stores now, people are doing it to other countries and bringing them to our gift shops. So the thing needs to happen worldwide that we want to protect our reefs. Of course, you all know with heat, there's coral bleaching, but coral bleaching also just happens as part of the natural occurrence of nature through evolution. They will, when the corals aren't feeding, they will they close up and then they open up. And if the zooxanthellae, which give them their color, get killed, it gets too stressed, that's when they get bleached out. Just a little aside, that's not part of the history. Anyway, so Dr. Voss suggested that there could be no greater project scientifically than to protect the coral reef, this area. So this shows you a picture of offshore Florida Keys Reef around 1975. Just a few boats out there at that point, but still doing some stress. There were noted conservationists who joined this plan to protect the reef. They included the Everglades National Park Superintendent Dan Beard, Charles Brookfield of the National Audubon Society, Dr. John Davis of the University of Florida, Ross Leffler, who was the Assistant Secretary of the U.S. Department of the Interior, and of course, John Pennycamp of the Miami Herald. I'm giving you a lot of these names because I know there's people in our audience who are from the community. Some of you may actually know more of this story than I do because you might have been here when I wasn't here. But Marvin Adams of Adams Cut was involved. So local people, Joe Lance, Herb Shaw. Many of you may remember the Shaws. Their descendants are still in the community. I have met their grandson and their son. Herb Alley and Bernie Pappy, Carlton Adams, who was with the Upper Keys Kiwanis Club, and many others. So it was surprising, but the result was that John Davis of the University of Florida made a motion that the Department of the Interior and the National Park Service should be petitioned to save the area, and a unanimous consent was given by the meeting, with a telegram sent to Washington before the day was over. I get goosebumps thinking about that. Seldom has an idea gained so much momentum and with so little resistance. While the concept of a coral reef park was not new, when it was proposed before as part of Everglades, it met with that opposition. But now what they did is they took land out of it. So this area here, see if I can get my pointer to work. This is, the green line is the current boundary of the park. And the magenta line is what is the National Marine Sanctuary. But when the park was first created, it went all the way from here to here, all the way to the continental shelf. So they approved the 75 square mile section, 10% of the entire Florida Keys reef tract, as a permanent preserve. The suggested boundaries of the park straddled that 3-mile line, which we are now bound by, this outer 3-mile line. And Governor Leroy Collins in 1959 gave the Coral Reef Preserve control of the ocean bottom to that limit. Then he and the industrialist Ross Leffler did the job of getting President Eisenhower to proclaim the federal ocean bottom to the state. So all the way out to this purple line was then part of the Key Largo Reef Preserve, which President Eisenhower declared on March 15 of 1960. Now on December 10 of 1960, Governor Collins dedicated the preserve and announced that it would be known as the John Pennycamp Coral Reef State Park. Now, John Pennycamp had no idea it was going to get named. Actually, nobody knew it was going to get named after him. But when Leroy Collins said that, there you go, we got her name. So just to, and this is the current one, but basically the park went from, is it going to show here? Well, yeah, north of Rodriguez Key, just there, all the way up to Broad Creek at the time. Now, in 1972, the submerged lands changed and were only, got pulled back to the 3-mile limit. What happened is fishermen were afraid of their livelihood and that there would be too much control of what they could fish or not. What actually happened is then the Key Largo Sanctuary was created, and we had double protection for the reef and the fish. But you still can fish in our waters. There's certain areas that are called spas that are protected areas that you can't fish in. But for the most part, fishing is done in the park. Now, I have learned that history gets handed down. So even though it was written somewhere, even though somebody told it to me, you don't always know if it's exactly the right truth. But history storytelling is story. So what I have done in my talk is tried to figure out the best I can. This, I believe, was a dedication of John Pennekamp State Park that was held at Harry Harris, the county park down at mile marker 93. So the park's land base was not yet really in existence when they did this dedication. And that's Senator Bernie Pappy at the mic. I think that's what this is. I can't swear by it, but that's my what I believe to be true. There's another dedication at the land base. After the land base was open in 1963, there was another one at John Pennekamp State Park. So this is our namesake, John D. Pennekamp Sr. The park doesn't have the D in it. We just call it John Pennekamp State Park. And I have met his sons and now grandsons. The sons are now gone, but they were here. And it's a very interesting little tidbit. So there's John Pennekamp. He had sons John and Tom. They each had sons John and Tom. So you have to try to go, okay, which one are you? But they're all a wonderful family, and it's great that they still support the park. This I like to show you all, because sometimes people say, oh, this land was donated. It was not. The state paid for it, and I have the document here. The first piece of property that we bought was so people could get from the highway down to Largo Sound here. We're right out here, out the door here. And we bought it from Herb and Donna Shaw for $12,000 for 3 acres. It's about a 60-foot wide strip that got people that way. And here is the original entrance to the park, that strip. And that's where our this picture is from 1979. And this was the park entrance from 1960 to 1982. This is what it looked like on a busy day in December 1971. Some of you see what our lines look like now too. And this is what it looks like today. It's just at the north end of the Circle K parking lot. And we moved our entrance to where it is now in 1982. Here's what our ranger station looks like today. So the new entrance. I like to do the before and now. At the Historical Society, they often do that program, and it's really nice to see. This is what it looked like then, and this is what it looks like now. Okay, another little big piece of history. So the Radford Crane family were the big landowners in the Keys. They owned more title than any other owner. And this I found in a paper that John Pennekamp actually authored in 1977. He had found this out with the help of Bernie Pappy, who was a considerable political force in Monroe County. John Pennekamp met with Mr. Crane and asked him to withhold sale of 70 acres of property for which he had an offer of $141,000 until Pennekamp could discuss it with the state and see if the state would buy it, because actually the park was already occupying some of this land. Upon a second meeting, Mr. Crane said, forget it, I'll just give it to you. So he gave 74 acres of the southwest part of Largo Sound for a land base in 1961. Mr. Crane also helped in preparing and filling in his land. And then at their next meeting of Pennycamp and Crane, when he was thanking Crane again, Pennycamp was thanking Crane, he said, Crane went, I'm going to give you some more. So because the land was in the Rand estate, Crane had checks amounting to $2.3 million given by his attorney, Jack Kehoe, and Pennycamp to Governor Ferris Bryant and the state cabinet for the remaining purchase through the McKay Trust, which had been set up. So it's a donation. The state had to buy it, but they gave us the money to buy it. The Crane family did that. Also, as a sidebar, this Rand gift included a considerable area of along US 1 just north of Adams Cut. Part of this land was given with Pennycamp's influence, John Pennycamp's influence, about 27 acres for the building of Key Largo School. So Key Largo School is on land that got given that way to the state. And it was clear and free due to Pennycamp's influence. And a portion of it is still park property. There's some land back there that is still park property. Actually, every time land becomes available that the state can acquire in the Upper Keys, it falls under John Pennycamp State Park jurisdiction. So we have lots of little parcels around where we're protecting parts of the natural world in the Upper Keys. Whoops. Right here, this says, in appreciation to Raymond E. and Ellen F. Crane Foundation, the acquisition in 1965 of this land base for the John Pennycamp Coral Reef State Park was made possible by their generous donation. Now it has the names of Raymond Crane, David Crane, Radford Crane, and Robert Crane. And this is some of the Crane family. The Crane family, I don't know their names, so you'll have to forgive me for that. Oh yeah, so what I was trying to point out here is you can see the names of the landowners, the different areas, and here is Herbert and Donna Shaw, and they sold another 70 acres. I'm not sure the lining of it because they had a farm here, which is now part of the park property. So they sold another parcel, 71 acres at the cost of $70,000. They also said that they wanted to live their lives. They sold it to the state, but with the thing that they could live out their lives here. And the house that they lived in is now our manager's house in the next little chunk of property north of here. And there's lots of remnants around from when they were living here. There used to be a pineapple farm, horses, some other fruit trees around, and we do have the Grove. If you haven't ever taken the Grove Trail, it's in the corner of the parking lot here, and you take it through the tropical hardwood hammock and end up in the historic Shaw Fruit Grove. So this gives you, this was the better picture of it. Oh, sorry. It's hard for me to, oh yeah, there's the basin. So there's the house. Here's the visitor center parking lot. So a lot of this land and into here was from the Shaws. And here's their farm sign. It was interesting when I was a ranger here in the early 2000s, we actually had a building that was theirs that we had to clean out and rebuild. And we found things from restaurants. I mean, I don't know if they had a restaurant on the property, but there was all sorts of artifacts basically in that building. And we cut the grove back to its original dimensions because the forest had started coming in. So that's a cultural resource. Having the grove is a cultural resource. So work began on the park in 1962 and in the land base. And in the early spring of 1963, roadway construction and marine dredging were nearly complete, and the work was started on the first buildings. I actually had to we had a photo of this in our collection, but it was cut off, and I actually had to go to state archives and buy this photo for my slide. This is a picture of Johnny Johnston, John Pennycamp, Ellison Hardy, and Joe Frederick. They were all rangers and management in the park. Actually, Ellison Hardy, the third here, he was the first superintendent of the park. And back then, the park staff all lived on the park. Their children went to school together. We're still a family, but it was very much a family at that point. Now here's another one that I'm like, a gentleman named Mike Farmer came to me with this picture and said that there was another dedication for the park, and maybe it was some other celebration like a dedication on Memorial Day weekend or something like that. I don't know what it was exactly. But it occurred offshore of Chica Lodge, and you can see this is Mike throwing a wreath from the Goodyear blimp. Goodyear blimp used to always be hanging out around in the Keys. I think it's still, you often see it in the lower Keys. And this was January 7, 1965. Little tidbits of history. This is an aerial photo of the park in 1969. Now this was before we had the visitor center. And here you can see, oops, sorry. Here is the Cannon Beach area. This is a marina. Back then and this is the camping area before all the trees grew back. And back then there was camping around all these areas where there are no longer. And this is all going to change again soon. So this is a 2007 aerial photo with the visitor center here, Cannon Beach, when the jetty was still pretty much part of the park. This is all eroded away now, and we've had to put up swim lines because boats started coming in. The main concession, the dive shop, the campgrounds up in here, all grown in with trees. And this photo is a 2023 aerial from Monroe County appraiser. And this one you can see, let's see, where are we? It's interesting to look at it from this angle. Okay, this is the way to the campground. This is Cannon Beach here. You can see the erosion that's happened over time. And yeah, the main road, the bridge, Far Beach, and the marina, dive shop. You know, I have a picture later on that's similar to one that Anne showed, but this is our butterfly garden that our nursery volunteers collected seeds, landscaped, grew the plants, landscaped, and planted it. This is going to have to move because the new Discovery Center is going to be about here, and it's going to, like Anne told us, include both of these buildings, what's that housing, and more. So a little secret in our park is we have an artesian well, fresh water. And I always like to point it out because I think it's really cool. There was in 1965, in June, there was a cooperative test project between Florida Keys Aqueduct Commission, the U.S. Geological Survey, and the Florida Board of Parks. At that time, the well was 6 inches in diameter. I think it must be, yeah, the well itself. 1,333 feet deep and flowed at 580 gallons per minute. It contained about it was about 1/6 as salty as seawater and maintained an average temperature of 81 degrees. That's from a park document in 1980-81. Now, things have changed. This is the well now. As I said, everything's grown up in the campground area, and we've pretty much not having it pump out as much water as it was in the past. It can actually flood our campground if we're not careful during rainy season. And this is a walkway that volunteers actually built back in 2005, about that time. So it's nice, you can just walk up there, and the well itself, oops, I keep doing that when it's pointed. The well itself is right here. And it pours into a pond that I thought it created, but I found out recently from the biologist it's a naturally occurring pond, so it's kind of interesting. So soon after the land base opened, campsites started right away. So here's a family having fun on the campsite on Cannon Beach. There were actually well over 100 campsites at that time. This is mid-60s, and it was reduced to the current 47 campsites in the 1970s. This is what is the current entrance to the campground. We had an upgrade back in 2010, 2011, and I think, I'm trying to remember if this was before that, but anyway, we got an electric gate so the day traffic doesn't drive all through the campground, and you have to have a code to go in that. Yes, I was right, 2010, 2011, with the gate, the sewer, and a paved road. It used to be a dirt road, and people would have their clothing out on the, the lines on their campsites, and the dust would kick up. So this was a much appreciated improvement by our campers. So you see people come in tents, they come in big RVs, they come with trailers, pop-ups. This is our group camp. Now our group camp is pretty much primitive camping. We do have water at the site, but no electricity, and there is a nearby restroom so that the group campers can tent here and have their fire circle and picnic tables in this area. Youth can reserve this 11 months in advance, and adult groups, organized adult groups, can 60 days in advance. This is the boat ramp and marina circa 1960s. Ours is now quite improved, can hold up to a 40-foot long boat. It's one of the nicer ramps in the Upper Keys. And it's getting worked on again. So we keep trying to keep the quality up to par. There used to be houseboat rentals in the park. Wouldn't that have been cool? We have mooring balls in Largo Sound where you can have your boat overnight. Our concessionaire takes charge of the fees, but this is also a way that instead of anchoring and spending the night, we're protecting the resource by having mooring balls. Cannon Beach on a busy day. The cannons are from, the ones on the beach are from a British shipwreck, the Winchester. The ones under the water, we have 15 cannons under the water at Cannon Beach from the 1715 Spanish fleet shipwreck didn't happen right there. We put the artifacts so people have something to look at while they're snorkeling around. I always like to show this. This is from back in the 1970s. We have an area now that doesn't look like this anymore, but we actually had what we called Hobie Beach, and we had a sailing train. You could have sailing lessons. So some of you may know Steve Gibbs. I don't know if any of you have been around long enough to know him, but he was also a free press reporter, and he talked to me one time, and he said that he thought he had probably taught 18,000 people to sail during the time that he was doing this. Actually, it might be 1800. Sorry, 1800. So these were like from 72 to 96 that he did that. It's now our education classroom. We've transformed it. This is where we have our kayak launch in the park. If you bring your own paddle boards and such, you'll come here. And this is our education center where schools can come, and we have state-of-the-art equipment for them to use if they can. And I do meetings in there for volunteers when it's buggy season and we can't have them outside. So it's a very helpful building to have. Another thing that people love to do here is kayak. We've got these wonderful mangrove trails. This is on our marina area as well. And this particular photos I got from Coral Reef Park Company, who rents them for us here. We have an accessible kayak launch, so people can come with a wheelchair. They have to bring their own support, but they can come and easily get into a kayak from their wheelchair. This is our snorkel shed here, where these can be picked up, and life jackets and your gear to go snorkeling, either on the beach or on the boat. One of the things in having these activities is it brings people closer to the environment, to understand, to know why we would want to preserve this. It gives them that experience. This is a picture of the first glass bottom boat we had in this park, called the Discovery. And you can see that the viewing wells in that were not as easy as what we have now, where people are kind of on their knees and leaning over to look out in the viewing wells at an angle. I never was on that, but I imagine it was not the most comfortable. And then in 1999, we got the Spirit of Penny Camp, our current glass bottom boat. This is a dedication with a then younger Randy and Mary Pegram, who own the concession, then Florida Park Service Director Fran Manella, who went on to be the Park Service Director for the national parks. And then this is John Jr. and Tom Pennycamp, the sons of John D. Pennycamp Sr., and the then park manager, Danny Jones. So this was a very fun day for people. Here's a nice picture of the Spirit of Pennycamp at the reef, and how the viewing wells are now, where you can stand up around and look down at it, or you can sit on the edge and look down in the viewing wells. You get a direct view of the reef that way. If you haven't taken that trip, it's really exciting. They have a narrator, and it turns a lot of people into scuba divers or snorkelers. I know a lot of people who, after they go on the glass bottom boat, they come back and say, oh, I got to go be a snorkeler. I got to get close to the reef. Now, I'm not going to tell you the whole story of the Christ of the Deep, because that's a whole nother talk that I have. But I can't do this history of Pennycamp without saying something about this iconic figure. So Christ of the Deep, as we have it at Pennycamp, was the third cast from a mold that the Christ of the Abyss, which is in the Mediterranean Sea, was created. So whenever you see Christ of the Abyss, it should be indicating the statue in the Mediterranean, and Christ of the Deep is the one that we have here in our park. Now, when it was donated, well, no, skipping ahead of myself. So the Christ of the Deep was donated to the Underwater Society of America by the skin diving gear manufacturer Egidio Cresci in 1962. The sculptor was Guido Galletti, who you see here. And as I just said, the Il Cristo degli Abissi rests in the Mediterranean Sea. And there's also another one in Grenada. Here is where the statue was transported from Italy to New York Harbor. And then it was pictured with Gabe Spataro. Now, even if you've just been around in the last 10 or 15 years, Gabe came back and was diving as a blind diver. He was legally blind. And so I got to sit down with him and talk to him about the whole journey of the Christ of the Deep statue and how it got from one place to another. And it's a long story, so I can't tell you all of it now. I will tell you that it sat in storage for many months. It traveled to different places and was seen like in Orlando and Lower Keys, Middle Keys. And there were many offers by other states that wanted to have this statue at their state. But the Underwater Society of America ended up donating them to the Florida Board of Parks. And the Florida Board of Parks decided that the Coral Reef State Park was the place it should be. This is when it was brought to Chicago. From New York, it went to Chicago. That was the first link. And the Underwater Society of America was having their annual convention in the Palmer House there. For those of you who are from Chicago, you probably know about the Palmer House. And again, here is Gabe Spataro, who saw to the whole movement of the statue to our park, and Carl Hauber, who at the time was the president of the Underwater Society. This gentleman was a band leader, because I was asking Gabe this. He couldn't really look at the picture, but I was telling him, and he knew the picture. And this gentleman, I think, was another person in the Underwater Society. I just was double checking that information today, and I was saying, I'm not sure if it's the person that I think it is. So I'm not going to tell you that. So when it was first brought to the park, it was on display in our marina on this slab, which is pretty much across from where that floating kayak dock was that I showed you, where the kayaks go out across from there. And then the slab itself is still there, but it's overgrown by mangroves. When I first came to the park in 2001, you could look over the bridge and see it, just that base in the mangroves, but it's totally grown over now. So in August 25, 1965, it was finally lowered into the sea in 20 feet of water at Key Largo Dry Rocks. At this time, it was in park boundaries. But remember what I told you about the park boundaries moving and the marine sanctuary being created around it? So the Christ statue is now in the sanctuary waters. But it's still associated with our park. It was given to our park, and our boat trips go out there. There's also a replica of it at St. Justin the Martyr Church at mile marker 106, if you've ever seen it. It's a replica of the same statue. Now, I like to point out our sign. I realize it's old news now, but it was really cool when we got it. Our local artist, Pasta Pantaleo, donated his time and energy and artwork He actually created this. I actually talked to him and I said, I'd like to have something that has elkhorn coral, hawksbill turtle, the yellowtail snapper, and the sea fans. So first he painted this painting called Hawk's Channel. And then he did the sign. We had the sign done by a local sign company with his, that he worked with them on doing that. This was a dedication ceremony with park manager Pat Wells and Pasta Pantaleo. And then in the background, there's actually the reporter Steve Gibbs that I told you about, and our county commissioner, Sylvia. Say it again? Murphy. Thank you, Sylvia Murphy. I have it written down. Sylvia Murray. So this is the visitor center as it looked when it opened in 1980. This is how it looks today. Here are some visitors looking in the aquarium in 2024. Really nice family. I said, can I have permission to take your picture? In 2010, which was around the time of our anniversary, it was earlier in the year, we actually had a remaking of the main aquarium, and artist Kia Ricci painted the coral. And let's see, then we had a ribbon cutting ceremony, every time for a ceremony that we can, in 2011. And some of you may know, well, this is John Pennycamp Jr., and this is Adrian Bazile, who is, I think, a part owner of the Conch House down at mile marker 100. He got it. I mean, his in-laws are the ones who own it, and I'm not sure how much, but he runs it now. And then some of you may have heard of John Hallis. He was one of the original sanctuary people. He had his office here, but he and his wife, Judy, created the whole mooring system that protects reefs worldwide. They went around the world having mooring balls installed to protect coral reefs around the world. This is our butterfly garden, which I mentioned earlier. Our nursery crew is amazing. We have 20 to 25 members that come here. They pick a day of the week. They get their training from us, and they come a day of the week. So they're watering, they're planting, they're collecting seeds from park lands to grow plants. So they created this butterfly garden and landscaped it, planted it, and then they had to do it all over again when Hurricane Irma hit in 2017, and the park was under 4 feet of water. So they've done that, and now they're going to have to do it again. They're also growing plants. They became a certified Florida nursery so that they can grow plants for when all this happens and we have to replant the park. We can actually use native plants from our own park nursery. Here's the dive shop in the circa 1980s. This is how it looks today. It's also going to get up a lift. What do you call it? Upgrade, facelift when we're having all these projects in our park in the next couple of years. The main concession building in the 1980s. How it looks today, and because of the construction that's happening, they've moved the Blue Heron Cafe to right outside the main one instead of being in the center where the new Discovery Center is getting built. Snorkeling at the reef is even more popular than ever today. This is the Coral Reef Park Company boat called the Encounter, which is an accessible boat. It's really great because it has a toilet that a wheelchair can, it has a head that's a toilet that a wheelchair bound person could use. And as Anne said for me before, volunteers are our life force. We can't do what we do without our volunteers. When I first came to the park, we'd say, oh, volunteers can only do things that rangers aren't doing. Well, guess what? Now they're running the park. So that's no longer the truth. We can't do it without them. These are all different kinds of people. I mean, Anne, how many tons did he get out of the water this year? 20 tons of trash in 1 year out of the water. This is Terry. Nursery volunteers, volunteers helping in the shop. These are Jack and Janine were also camping volunteers. We hope to have them back. And we appreciate our volunteers. We like to have parties. We have volunteer appreciations. We like to give them awards. Just, they're part of the family. They're part of our team. And even if we have different designation of our titles, we work side by side as a team. Our friends are volunteers. All of our friends are volunteers, so they are an important part of our workforce as well. They raise funds for projects in the park. So any donations that you give are going to the park through this vessel of the Friends Group. Here are some of the projects they've been working on. In the area, if you ever take the walk, the main trail at Dagny Johnson, there's an area that gets inundated during tidal flow. And so they're working so that we can have, have a boardwalk. Last year, they bought this research vessel for us so we can go out to the reef and do lots of different things there. We got new mooring balls and they do repairs with the money. And the coral cam was an exciting thing that actually finally got this Discovery Center off the ground, because back in 2012, I was asked to do a design for a new visitor center, just to get people talking about it. Well, it took a while, but when the state officials came for this coral cam dedication, when it started, they said, oh my gosh, look at this visitor center. And that's what got them really moving to have us have a new Discovery Center. So again, because of the Friends' work, people paid attention and things are happening. And as Anne also mentioned, we're going to have a new Discovery Center. Here, this is the marina. This is basically where the old center is that we're in today, Cannon Beach. And right now, this is an this is one of the early renderings. The actual road is going to go differently. And I even hesitate to say how it's going to go, but it's supposed to happen so that this is all parking lot and nobody will have to cross a road like they have to go from one thing to another. And then we are going to get finally a new bridge, because that bridge has been like this the whole time that I've been in this park. Okay, is it going to last another year? Is it going to last another year? So that's part of this exciting time that we're into. I'm not going to say the numbers because Anne said them, but we're very glad to have partners on this. And our friends are having to raise another $500,000 towards this project. So help us out. I just like to show pictures of the reef. This is where my love was. I came down to the Keys many times, just enjoying diving and snorkeling, and I finally said, I have to live there. And like I said earlier, I thought I'd be a ranger for about 5 years, but luckily there's always new things happening and new challenges. So I have stayed all this time because it's really enervating. So I love the reef. I love that this park is protecting it. I like to end with this last slide, next to the last slide, that it's a very big job for us to protect our natural resources, especially with not enough financial resources, but it is a #1 priority of the Florida Park Service. This is Carey's Fort Light around 1985, which originally was built to protect ships from the reef. But now it's protecting the reef from ships. Our thinking has changed how we think about it. So I thank you very much for your attention. And this is my contact information. If you're interested in being a volunteer, I happen to be the volunteer manager, and my email. And talk to me tonight if you're interested in knowing more about that. In the meantime, the lights are raising, and does anybody have any questions? Yes, ma'am, what's your question? Okay, the question is, there are 47 campsites now. Are they thinking about increasing them? Well, Monroe County is an area of critical environmental concern. And so there's a limit on how many campsites there can actually be in the whole county. So I don't see us having new campsites, but I will say that some of the parks have been experimenting with glamping. So one or two of our campsites could in the future become a glamping spot, which would be outsourced. It would be run by a company that would have the tents on a platform and, you know, have the sheets, all that, so somebody could come and glamp. I don't know if we're going to have that, but there's talk about it. Good question, thank you. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Yes, this whole renovation, is it all paid for by state tax money or government money, or is it paid for all by volunteers, or a mix?
It's a mix. The question is, how are these things getting paid for? I will tell you, the big moneymaker for our parks is the entrance fee at the front gate. That is our operational money. My wages might be paid by taxes, but the operational money of the parks is coming from entrance fees, annual passes, those sorts of things. So for this particular new big project, 50 million of the 52.5 million the state is coming up with. 2 million is coming from the TDC, thank you very much. And $500,000 we're going to raise with our volunteer group, the Friends of John Pennycamp and Dagny Johnson State Parks. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Years ago, this was, I believe, the most popular, most visited park in the state system. Is it still?
So the question is, or the statement in question is, years ago, this was the most visited park, and is it still? So what happened is the way they count the number of people in the park has changed. So they used to count, they had a formula for counting all the boats out on the water. And they changed that formula. So we are now not the most visited park. It dropped our numbers significantly because we used to say we had 1 million visitors a year. Now we say we have 500,000 visitors a year. So I'm not sure where that all happened, but Anne's raising her hand.
Just to let you know, we get 500,000 visitors, and this park puts $54 billion into the economy of the county and supports over 800 jobs directly. So that's the impact of this park.
Right. So the park has impact still, but actual visitation is different. Now, we do put more money into the Florida state parks because of our concession. So our concession, I'm not sure it's the same amount, but it was like 10% of their earnings came to the Florida state parks. So even though our park may not have as high a visitation as, say, Honeymoon Island, they still have, we're making a lot of money for the Park Service. And Anne has some more information.
In the last audit was done, the concessionaire spent put $700,000 into the park.
When did that happen?
$680,000 went from the concession into the state park system during their last audit.
Okay, during the last year or their last audit? 680,000, thank you, Ann, for this information. $680,000 came from the concession to the parks in their last audit. Thank you, Ann. Yes.
You also might want to mention that 50 cents of every entry fee that people pay to come into the park goes back to the county.
So what Ann is talking about is the 50-cent fee when you come into the park. It's a certain amount per car, and then there's a 50 cent per person. That was designated by the Florida legislature to be put into a bucket for funds to buy land in a critically I'm forgetting the exact words, but an area of environmental critical concern. So that money gets put into that coffer so that that money can buy additional lands in the Keys for preservation. Yes, sir.
I think that's called the Florida Forever. That's the Florida Forever Fund. And are there any?
I'm not hearing you. Say again.
Sorry. I imagine that's the Florida Forever thing. I remember that from your.
Florida Forever is another thing. That's a
one.
different thing.
And the other part is, you're saying to buy other lands there. Does the park have any like targets? I remember the last one, Rodriguez Key, when that was bought many years ago.
Right.
Are there any other target areas?
I am not. The gentleman is asking, are there any other target areas? He was around when Rodriguez, I showed in the early picture, but I didn't say it. Rodriguez Key is now part of Pennycamp, but at one time it was just on the edge of the boundary of Pennycamp. But I do not know, that's something, I don't know if there's anything targeted to be purchased, and I don't know who would be making that decision.
Or donated.
Donations come, land donations do come, but I don't know that they're, again, targeted. We get pieces of property. You had a question, sir.
Yes, where is is Dagny Johnson Park, is that part of Pennycamp or is it just a separate park in the state system?
The question is Dagny Johnson part of John Pennycamp? So no, but we manage it. So that park, Dagny Johnson State Park, is managed by our park. It's a preserve, so it was purchased to protect the largest contiguous West Indian mahogany hardwood hammock in the United States. So it's a big piece of property, and actually citizens of Key Largo band together to have that purchased by the state. I know some of the people are still around, and they actually created a film. They went up to the legislator and showed it at the legislative meeting, and they really worked hard to convince that to be purchased. And Dagny Johnson was the head of that group. She was a lawyer, and she basically helped everybody make it happen. But many other people contributed to that, and some of them are still around. I've had one of them speak for this lecture series more than once.
Where is that founded?
1980.
Oh, it's much younger than
It's a younger park, yes. And we used to have more staff dedicated to it. Now there's only one staff dedicated to it, but thank goodness for volunteers. We have a volunteer who goes up there every day, cleans, makes sure that we have a counter for how many people visit. It's an honor system for paying the fee. So again, those monies help the park, and we have the assistant manager gets those, and our friends also table up there sometimes. So one of our volunteers in the back there is somebody who sits up there. So anyway, so thank you for all those questions. Does that answer your question, sir? Okay. Anybody else have questions? Well, thank you for your time. I'm going to, before you leave, we have some things to give. You have a ticket in your possession. I first want to say I hope you can join us for next month's presentation on June 22, back to the fourth Monday. This will be Mighty Migrations, Southeast Florida's role in the incredible journey of songbirds with Stephanie Munguia, Avian Conservation Programs Manager for Zoo Miami. Please don't forget to turn in your survey cards in the lobby. And if you want to volunteer, there's a flyer you can pick up. And Lindsay has her hand raised.
I know many of you are heading uptown and back to the place where it is actually comfortable temperature. As we go into summer, we do broadcast on Zoom starting at 7:30. You can get the link through our Facebook page or through signing up for our newsletter. If you're having trouble, I monitor the friends info email account. I've been chatting with some people today. So even if you decide to leave us and head back to the north, you can still tune in to learn about songbirds in June and for the rest of the summer.
Did everybody hear that? Great. Thank you for including that, Lindsay. I'll put that in my talk next time. So the final part of our evening is a gift bag drawing. These items were provided by our friends in appreciation of your enthusiasm and support for the park and our lectures.